Our titles at That Game Company definitely have a common DNA through them. What I see is really an emphasis on visceral or immersive experience of video game spaces, really emphasizing the environment and the audio. There's no death, there's no time limit, and there's no heads-up display. All that information we really try and embed into the experience itself to hopefully make games that are very intuitive.
Game development is not just about writing code or making models. You need to observe the world to figure out what people really need and make them. And when they see it, they're like, oh, I've been waiting this for a long time. But if you ask them, they wouldn't be able to describe what they want.
There's a huge difference in working with an internal team and an external team. And typically, the teams that we work with as far as external teams are long-standing teams with lots of history around them. But in the case of That Game Company, they were one of our incubation teams. So they're actually vastly different than working even with any of our other external teams.
We're making entertainment. And entertainment essentially is emotional supplements for people. If you want to create a success, or which in my opinion is you want to create the biggest contribution to the world, you better figure out what the world needs most and you build it.
We try and pick themes and emotions that we think anyone could relate to. Each time we've really challenged ourselves to do something different or explore a kind of gameplay that we haven't seen before, that we haven't made before.
Genova and I met in school at USC a number of years ago, and I did flow for him as it was his master's thesis. You know, he was exploring this notion of flow theory in games, and sure enough, you know, the thing took off like wildfire, and that's what led to Sony making the deal with That Game Company and leading us to do Flow again as a PS3 title.
When we made Flower, it's already super hard to describe. We say this is an interactive poem exploring the urban bustle and the natural serenity. But when it comes to Journey, it's a metaphor trying to explore our life's transformation and the crossing, the intersecting of our lives between each other. That's when we start to realize game innovation can actually be about emotion rather than just game mechanics or game simulation technology innovation. You can innovate on what game makes you feel. And that's pretty much kind of started our company, which is we want to make a game that makes you feel differently.
For me, the most important thing about That Game Company is their complete willingness to turn their backs on the traditional way of how to look at the world.
To me, the most important thing is that a game resonate with someone, that it be meaningful. What I always look for in an experience is, did it move me? Did it make me feel something new and interesting?
At That Game Company, because we've really found that we enjoy the pace of a small team sort of working tightly together, a lot of the decision-making process we go through on a project is about understanding what we can do to still leverage our limited resources but create a really polished experience.
It's definitely collaboration all the time. And that's really great because We all wear a lot of hats around here, and that's really fun.
That is why TGC as a company is so strong. It is the individuals who make up that company. It's their philosophy. Everyone who tries their experience is never going to look at games the same way again.
It could be believable that, one day Genova woke up with the idea in his head and then we just made it. But that's not how it works.
For Journey as a game, it's a person's birth was very young and he doesn't know anything, and he started to explore, and the childhood is very safe and everything is exciting. And then as he grew, he realized more and more about why he's here and his purpose.
You wake up in this desert environment and you see the mountain in front of you. That's the goal of the game, is to get to the mountaintop. But through the experience of Journey, you learn who you are and what's happened in this world and what your purpose is.
At the beginning of the project, I was the only artist on the team. And Genova and I talked a lot about the story, the feelings of the game that we wanted to get. It was very free form. There wasn't very many, constraints.
It's the blank canvas problem. When you start a painting, it's white paper and you don't know where to go, and you just grab a pen, throw it onto the paper, very much like the brainstorm.
When they first go off and try to figure out what they're going to do, they just have an emotional vibe that they want to work off of, and they have a general concept of the things that they want to try to get across to people. But they don't necessarily know what that is, and we're all kind of waiting on the outside, and as they slowly kind of form this idea, we get to figure out new ways to support them, which is, again, that's very different than working with an internal or an external team in most cases.
It was a very iterative process. We just tried out a whole lot of things. I drew zillions of pencil drawings before we even went to the computer. That's where, the idea of this mountain originated. Originally, it wasn't a mountain, it was a cliff, and there was a crack in the cliff. So when we were designing the look of the environment, I was looking at a lot of different architecture from the ancient world, Egyptian architecture, Islamic architecture. I looked at Mayan temples. I'm an architecture nerd, so for Journey I really wanted to design a canon of architecture. And I wanted to have these curved, arches, but to do them in 3D it was too much, so we had to simplify the arches to be square shapes. And that kind of led me into looking at Navajo rugs and Native American symbology. Since they're made on a loom, curves are very difficult, so they have a lot of symbols that are very angular and iconic because of that. It took so long to design that guy. I did hundreds of drawings for him, and it was difficult because we had just come off a flower, and the character is this gust of wind, That Game Company's never done a humanoid character. And so I had this kind of weight sitting on my shoulders. How do you do the first humanoid character for That Game Company? So for a long time, he was just an amorphous, pile of sand or something. The character came to me, through a ton of iteration, but the idea of cloth came, and we were like, he needs to be made out of cloth. So I started looking at kites, and so I looked at Japanese kite design, and that kind of gave me an idea for this very simple design based on those rug designs and those kind of patterns that I had actually been looking at for the architecture. The music of Journey is written by Austin Wintory, and he is my hero. He's a god. I love him. He's just super talented.
So then Genova reached out to me right after Flower came out and said, I'd love to go to dinner and talk about our third game and see what you think. He was telling me all about his notions of the monomyth and Joseph Campbell and what all he was hoping to achieve with this game. He said, so what we would love to move forward is if you could write a central musical theme from which the rest of it will kind of be derived.
When we were still in the very start of the project, he sent us a test piece of music, and it was just so beautiful.
Genova came in with Kelly and pitched the game to us. Team over at TGC had created a PowerPoint presentation. Halfway through, they start a trailer, and this trailer is really more of a teaser of moods and feelings and these landscapes. And there was a musical piece that I think everyone now has heard, created by Austin Wintory, the composer of the game.
We did a little mock-up trailer to greenlight the game with his music in it, and it gave it the mood, and I think that really was something that helped get the game off the ground.
It's one of the only times it ever happened to me that we had the meeting, and then I walked to my car, and in that space of 50 yards, it was there in my head. I mean, exactly. It was one of those rare instances where it's just like a lightning strike, where I got to my car, and so I left myself this voicemail. It's like, okay, solo cello, da na 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 na. Okay, and then maybe a harp should come in with bass flute, and it was crystal clear. So, it was down in Santa Monica, so I got a 30-mile drive or whatever back to the studio. So in that time, I called my cellist, Tina Guo, and I said, can you meet me at the studio in maybe 90 minutes? And called my bass flute player, Amy Tatum, and said, can you meet me at the studio in 90 minutes? Did a quick mock-up of the orchestra aspect of it. And they came in and we read it, and I sent it back, and that game company, in their typical way, was kind of like, okay, this will work. Let's get going.